right now we are heading to
Earthling Ed.
to see Earthling Ed, one of the biggest vegan activists out there for animal rights, and just talks about health, nutrition, and whatnot. So we're super excited to see him. We'll see you guys on the train and on into New York City.
Cardio.
Come on,
Got a lot
come
of
on.
cardio in today.
Run.
Okay. So I don't know.
I had a great uncle who wrote a book that was actually a best-selling book called First Lady of the Seeing.
What happens when you take
It
something
was
for the
about
first time?
the very first seeing eye dog.
Really? What was it? Golden
And
Retriever?
his name.
Wow.
Oh, I gotta get a free. How come? How come?
I honestly don't have a lot of but it was just kind of a last minute thing. I didn't have a ticket, like you said, so I was just gonna come and see if I could get in.
Yeah, for the waiting line.
Jesus, Oliver, you look like a beast.
It's a heavy short.
It's not a heart attack. Hello. Answer my DMs. Please answer my DMs. Woo! Yes.
Start, I just want to say a huge thank you to the Columbia Vegan Society for being so gracious and welcome as to invite me. But more importantly, thank you to all of you for making the journey down or up or wherever you've come from today to come visit me. I really appreciate you taking time out of your day to do so, especially on a Sunday.
Thank you for changing the world.
Aww, yes. Yes.
I've got that $20 to you at the end of it. Okay, so I think it's important to start with, and I realised in that moment that our exploitation of animals has permeated to so many aspects of our day-to-day life that we don't even comprehend the scale at which they're exploited and at which they suffer. We have no idea. And I still learn things to this day that I had no idea about. What we do to animals and the scale and magnitude of the suffering that we commit against them is incomprehensible. Incomprehensible. And when I think about it, I can't help but feel enraged, but so bitterly disappointed that we do these things, but also that I used to be a part of these things as well. And so after I watched this documentary, I sat down next to my hamster, because I had a little companion animal called Rupert, lovely hamster, I love him so much. And so anyway, he's running around my arms and on my hands, and I'm looking at Rupert, and I said, Rupert the hamster has a personality. He's an individual. He has likes and dislikes that make him unique. He loves broccoli but hates kale, which coincidentally is a bit like me, I suppose. But I looked at Rupert the hamster in that moment, and I recognized him as an individual. And so I said, well, hang on a minute. All these animals in that film must also be individuals by default as well, which means that all the animals that I pay to be exploited still on my behalf are also individuals with their own likes and dislikes and their own personalities and idiosyncratic behaviours that make them unique. And I felt like a hypocrite again. And so I was faced with the same two questions I'd been faced with earlier, and so I made the change. That time was to vegan, thankfully. And so being vegan, it caused me to learn so many new things, mostly because people were throwing so many new ideas at me, so many arguments I'd never considered before. And so I want the rest of this talk to kind of be a dissection, I suppose, of these different ideas and arguments and excuses and beliefs, and try and see if we can reach some common ground about how we all feel and how our values align with our lifestyles. And so, to give you an example, I think when dealing with issues of morality and when we apply moral arguments, it's important those moral arguments come under a certain level of scrutiny and accountability, meaning we can't just readily accept something. It has to be applied into a multitude of different situations to see if the argument still holds up and has credibility. So let me provide you with an example. If we say that humans should have autonomy and should be exploited because they are conscious, sentient, and have individualistic experiences of life, then to be consistent with our argument, we have to believe that non-human animals are also deserving of autonomy and a right to life without exploitation because they too are conscious, sentient, and have an individualistic experience of life. That's an example. But let's continue. Let's take an idea. It's any idea. And you push that idea into society long enough, it becomes a societal norm. Now, if you fuel societal norms further, they become part of society's culture. If you pass cultures on generation to generation, they become tradition. And so is culture and tradition a good enough reason for us to use and exploit animals? So let's apply that way of thinking consistently and apply it to different situations as well. And so let's start with other examples of non-human exploitation. And so let's look at Yulin, or Southeast Asia in general. Now, the Yulin Dog Meat Festival is a festival where every single year they slaughter tens of thousands of dogs to consume them. Now, that's a cultural event. Is it a moral event? They also steal the dogs from people's families and backyards, but if it's a cultural event, does that even change anything? Does that make it more or less moral? What about in Japan, where every single year they kill hundreds of dolphins off the coast of Taiji? Is that moral because it's traditional? Or what about in the Faroe Islands, where every single year they slaughter hundreds of pilot whales? And understand that what we do to animals is a choice, not a necessity. And so what about that idea of a choice? Because how often do we hear as vegans, well, actually it's a personal choice. Please don't force your views on me. I personally choose to use animals. And therefore I respect your choice to be vegan, but please just respect my choice to not be vegan. Now, of course, again, I'm going to concede some ground and say it is a personal choice to consume animal products. In the same way that every action that we make is a personal choice, regardless of whether that action is moral or immoral. And so the question then becomes, well, is something morally justified just because we as humans personally choose to do it? I mean, if I go to a shelter, rescue a dog, bring them home and then abuse them myself, I've personally chosen to do that, but does that make it moral? Of course not. If we leave this event tonight, go down the road and mug someone, we've personally chosen to do so, but does that make it moral? No, of course not. So why in this moment would exploitation become moral simply because we personally choose to partake in that exploitation? And when we cite personal choice, whose personal choice are we considering other than our own? Because one of the reasons I went vegan was for personal choice. The personal choice of the trillions of animals who are killed needlessly every single year, who, if granted their choice, would rather just live a life without suffering and exploitation. Remember that animals do not willfully walk into the slaughterhouse. They are forced there against their will. Any notion of choice has been removed for them. So when we cite choice, what about their choice? Why do we think of their choice and their desire to live and the fact that we take any notion of choice, rip it away from them, in the same breath that we rip their flesh and their secretions away from them? And what about that notion of forcing views? Because sometimes people say, well, vegans force their views. I mean, there's a lot of militant vegans out there. But what's more forceful? Me saying, please don't harm animals, or someone else paying for an animal to be killed on their behalf? Now, often people say, Ed, you force your views, you have these conversations and you make people feel guilty. Well, I can't make you feel guilty for something unless your subconscious tells you you should feel guilty. If you feel guilty from what I say, that's not because of me. That's because I'm saying something that resonates with you and makes you feel something that maybe you've not considered before. And really, that's the purpose of why I'm here. Not to tell you you're a bad person, or to say that I think you're consciously doing something wrong, but to say there's another way to live, and maybe we've never considered it. But if we don't know, and we're not aware, well, we can never consider it. So count this as maybe the other side of the story, raising a bit of awareness that you do know, and you can hold yourself accountable and responsible for the decisions that you make. But nothing can ever be as forceful as paying for someone else to pull a knife across the throat of an animal. Even if you left here today and I followed you to the supermarket and made you buy tofu and walked home with you and watched you cook it and made you eat it, right? That still wouldn't come anywhere near as forceful as taking the life of someone who does not want to die and who does not have to die. And so I want to do a little thought experiment. And let's say that I bring a live piglet into this room now. And in a little form of 5-month piglet, pretty cute. And so they're running around your feet and they're squeaking and linking. And I say, okay then, well, maybe some of us are going to go home and eat bacon tonight. So I'm going to help you guys out. Don't worry about the supermarket. Just kill this pig. And then you can have the pig. And you can have bacon tonight. And I say, but, there's a little caveat to this little conundrum, which is that you've got to kill the pig using what you were biologically given, which is your claws and your canines, because, well, that's what natural predators do. And someone stops me sometimes and they say, I know where you're going with this, Ed. I get you, but remember, as humans we have brains, and because we have brains we've now evolved to have guns and knives, and so we don't need to use our claws and our canines. So your argument's pretty much redundant. And that's fair enough. Yeah, of course we've evolved to be able to develop killing machines, not that that's something to brag about, but we have evolved to develop killing machines. But also remember that we've evolved to develop aeroplanes as well, but does that mean that we're biologically or naturally meant to fly? No, of course not. I mean, I've tried. Doesn't work. But sometimes people turn around and they say that we're intrinsically designed to kill animals. It's a primal instinct that we have. Is it? So if this piglet was running around now, would you feel the desire to kill, or the urge to kill? I highly doubt that. And in fact, something that really strikes me as unusual is when I try to show slaughterhouse footage, often what people say to me is, don't show me that. Or put me off my food. Why? Why was in the process of how animal products arrive on our plate put us off our food? Why did it make us upset? Why did it make us angry? Surely it should make us hungry. We should see an image of a cow being slaughtered and say, yum, steak tonight. But that's not what we say. When pigs are loaded to gas chambers and they scream and thrash, we don't say, nom nom, I can't wait to eat some bacon. We get angry and upset. And sometimes we point the finger and we say, who could do that? People point the finger to slaughterhouse workers and say, what kind of person could do this with their life? Well, who's paying their wages? Who's creating the jobs for them? Do you think these people want to be there? Nobody wants to work in a slaughterhouse. People don't go to school and to college to get a qualification to work in a slaughterhouse. They do so out of necessity, because there's no other occupation available to them. Slaughterhouses are put in deprived areas where people don't have the luxury of choice. People are forced into these occupations because they have no choice. These industries commodify animals, but they also exploit humans as well, and use people from disadvantaged backgrounds to make them do something that most of us, in fact, I'm happy to say all of us, would not want to do with our day-to-day lives. In Canada, during the height of the Syrian refugee crisis, many people were trying to find residency in Canada. And so the Canadian government said, we're going to give you a fast-track visa. We'll let you into the country as soon as we can, fast-track. But you have to work in a slaughterhouse. Because Canadians didn't want to do those jobs, didn't want to kill animals. And so they had a lack of jobs being taken in slaughterhouses. Well, that's no good, because people want to eat meat. But someone has to kill the animal, right? But no one wants to do that. So I have an idea. Let's get the people who are fleeing from civil war, who have no choice, and say, look, we'll give you a safe home. You're just going to spend every day killing animals. We take them from one arena of violence and put them in another arena of violence. But then we say that we're the evolved, compassionate species. But the audacity to claim these things, when houses of slaughter exist all around us, slaughterhouse, house of slaughter, and they don't just exist in single digits, they exist in the tens, if not hundreds of thousands, all around the world, in every single country, where living beings are taken in, chopped up, mutilated and butchered, and taken out wrapped in plastic, so a consumer can walk into a slaughterhouse, turn a blind eye and say the blood isn't on their hands. But then we say we're still Jeffrey Dahmer. So why is it that we look at children who harm animals as being potential red flags for humans who may one day grow up to harm other humans? After all, a lion teaches their children to kill. A jaguar teaches their children to kill. A tiger teaches their children to kill, yet we discourage our children from killing. Is that not so contradictory in nature? Why would we do so? I think it goes against our intuitive morality. I think that's why. Because deep down, none of us like to see animals suffering. None of us. We all love animals. We're against animal cruelty. I've never ever had someone tell me they're for animal cruelty. No one is for animal cruelty. People hate those who abuse animals. Look at Michael Vick, who did dog fighting. Oh, the nation in the US hated him because he had dogs fighting. But morally, what's the difference? It's all suffering. It's all for sensory pleasure. It's all for pure enjoyment. And if it's not a necessity, then consuming animals for taste is the same as paying for dogs to fight, because we do it because we enjoy it. So morally speaking, there's no difference. It will become so outraged as someone who puts dogs into an arena for fighting, but not outraged when we walk into a supermarket or into a restaurant or fast food chain and buy an animal who has suffered in the exact same way, and whose life is as uniquely valuable to them as any dog's, or indeed potentially even as much as ours is. We turn a blind eye to that suffering because we're so conditioned by our society to do exactly that. Juxtapose our moral value and our ethics, but this is what we do. And this is how we live, in a constant state of turmoil, never questioning what it is that we do or how it is that we act. And so what about taste? Because taste is the number one reason I am always given. People often go for a range of different things. They'll point to their ancestors, point to other animals, point to protein, but fundamentally it always comes down to taste. I like the taste of these products. And so is taste a good enough moral justification for what we do to animals? Let's simplify that. Is sensory pleasure a good enough moral justification for what we do to animals. Now bear in mind that if we justify our exploitation of animals for sensory pleasure, then everything that provides us sensory pleasure is automatically justified as a result of moral consistency. And so let's think of all the things that humans can do that have a victim, but cause sensory pleasure to the oppressor. Now tell me, in your mind, are they moral? Of course not. So why is it therefore moral to harm animals who wish to live their life and who do not wish to suffer simply because we enjoy the consequence of their suffering? What has higher value, taste or life? What do you think has higher value in our eyes? What should have higher value in our eyes? The meat I buy and the products I buy come from animals who were humanely killed in slaughterhouses, where they were regulated by governments and laws, so it must be fine. Now the word humane means having or showing compassion or benevolence. And so humane slaughter is an oxymoron because you can never compassionately or benevolently take the life of an animal who does not want to die for an unnecessary reason. And if you have a pet at home, an animal you love, a companion animal, dog, cat, hamster, like in my case, a rabbit, any animal, if they need to be euthanized, would you take them to a slaughterhouse to have that procedure done? And if you wouldn't, that should tell you all you need to know about how humane a slaughterhouse can be. Now, I had a conversation not so long ago last week with a dairy farmer, and I asked her that question. Actually, it's funny you asking that, because actually I have a dog, and my dog's actually really ill, and my dog is probably going to be put down the next couple of months. And she said, I would take them to the slaughterhouse. And I said, just think about what you said there. The animal who you love in your home, you're going to take them to the slaughterhouse to be killed. Really? Would we want to see the dog, our dogs and our cats with the bolts in their head, or the electricity put through their brains? Would we want to see them hung up on the bleeding line, kicking and thrashing as they bleed to death? Of course we wouldn't. So disingenuous for her to claim that. I thought, how could you say that? How could you, knowing what happens in these places, say that you put the animal who you love in the same place these animals are killed? Of course you wouldn't. So neither would we. But it's funny. When we sign petitions against Human Dog Meat Festival, or against any festival like that, we never say things like, kill the animals more humanely. We never say, give them bigger cages, or label the meat differently. But let's propose a few questions, just towards the end now. And let's say that if all the animals being killed in Yulin, in South Korea, or in Japan, or in the Faroe Islands, let's say that the meat that was sold was labelled free range. Would that make it better? I mean, let's be honest, the whales and dolphins are about as free range as you can possibly get, right? It's just that we then herd them in and kill them, but is that alright? Probably not. Let's say that we brought all the animals that we killed, or that killed in those countries, let's say that we brought them to American slaughterhouses. Would that make it acceptable and moral if we killed dogs and cats in the same way that we kill cows and pigs and chickens and sheep? Probably not. And if it wouldn't, we found a state of moral inconsistency again. So I want to leave you a few questions. So many questions. So many questions. I want to leave you a few questions. Which is, in a world where we have an abundance of choice, where we're not constrained by necessity to harm others, where we live in a society where we have supermarkets and restaurants and fast food chains even that sell vegan products, the fact that we can have social situations and get all the nutrients that we need and live the life that we've always lived, but doing so in a way that doesn't harm others, and doing so in a way that is simply plant-based or vegan, then why wouldn't we? What moral justification do we still have to perpetuate a system of violence and suffering? Would we want to pull the knife ourselves? Would we want to be the ones in the slaughterhouse? Would we want to be the ones seeing the animal kicking and thrashing? Would we look them in the eyes? Would we justify it to them? Would we say to the pigs in the gas chambers, I'm sorry, but I really love the taste of your flesh in a sandwich? Would we say to the dairy cow whose baby's been taken away from her, I'm sorry, but I like how your milk tastes, or your lactations taste, my cup of tea or coffee, or on my porridge, or on my cereal, or congealed into a box of cheese that then grates on top of my pasta? Would we say that to them? Would we look them in the eyes and say that straight to their face? Or what if they could believe us? What if they could hear us? What if they could comprehend what we were saying? Would that change anything? If they could speak back to us? It's all well and good saying these things to an animal, but they can't tell us otherwise. And so what if they could speak our language? And we said to them, I'm sorry about this, but this is why. And they said, well, that's not good enough, I'm suffering. What would we say then? Would we say, I don't care? Would we say, it doesn't bother me? Is the reason it's so comfortable to exploit animals the fact that they can't talk back? They can scream, but we can ignore their screams. Is the fact they can't talk back, that we can pretend they don't understand, we can pretend they don't suffer, we can pretend they don't feel pain, we can pretend they don't feel fear. Is that why it makes it so much easier? Because it happens somewhere where we don't have to acknowledge it. And so is it time for us to acknowledge it? Is it time for us to watch the footage that maybe we don't want to watch? Or to read the facts and studies that maybe we don't want to read? Is it time to acknowledge the hypocrisy in our own lives where we say one thing, I am an animal lover, I am against animal cruelty, but I love the taste of bacon, and I love the taste of salmon, and I love the taste of cheese? Is it time for us to acknowledge that within ourselves, try and find a moral justification, and if we can't, what do we do then? Do we bury our heads in the sand? Do we take our heads out of the sand? Do we look ourselves in the mirror? And do we say with so much at stake, our planet, my health, and the lives of trillions of animals, do I have to feel the responsibility that lies on my shoulders? Because the responsibility does lie on each and every one of our shoulders. Now we can say that we don't make a difference. We can say that as an individual I won't change anything. But do we believe that to be true? As there's a pond of water in front of me. And I say here, one more drop of water for the pond. And you're probably going to say, well, that's not going to change anything. The pond's full of water, so what difference will one drop make? But I drop that drop of water in, and it causes a ripple, and the ripple expands, and it expands. And before long, that one drop of water has changed the surface of the pond. Now say we times that one drop by 100, or 1,000, or 10,000, or 100,000, or 1,000,000. The impact that it has is profound. And so think of yourself as a single drop of water, and think of the pond as the world. We may seem insignificant, but every action that we make can change how the world looks in the landscape of that pond. But when we come together, when we act in unison, the impact we can have is profound. Every positive thing that's happened in our society, every social justice movement that's occurred and continues to occur to this day, succeeds or will succeed precisely because groups of individuals came together to make their voices heard. It's through the unified action of individuals that we can start to make progress. And so never doubt the ability that you have, because your ability can change how this world looks. And so is it time for us to acknowledge the responsibility and burden that lies on each and every one of our shoulders, and to understand that enough is enough. And by God, it is enough. Too much time has been lost on excuses that have no credibility or veracity. Too much time has been spent debating things that science has already proven to be either false or correct. It is time for us to acknowledge that and change accordingly. And so when we leave this room today, how do we leave this room? Do we leave this room with the same mindset? Or do we leave this room with a new mindset that says, I want to make this world a better place for the lives of others. And importantly, I want to leave a world behind for my children and my grandchildren. And I understand that I don't change my actions that I make as an individual. The things that I want will be unobtainable. So what world do we want to leave behind? For our own species, but also for the species of animals who are screaming and crying and in fear today, but who don't have to be in the future. Thank you for listening. Thank you so much, Al. We've got a bit of time. I realise that it's super warm in here, isn't it? But we do have, if anyone has any questions they'd like to ask.
I have to leave. I don't have a question, but I have some information. Last week, the front page of the New York Times talked about a antibiotic-resistant fungus. Has anybody heard of this?
Yes.
And they're 80%, I believe, maybe I'm wrong, are the antibiotics shot into animals because of the hard conditions. So, and doctors, they talk more about doctors giving antibiotics, get a little sore throat, here's antibiotic, overuse of antibiotics. And very briefly they said about that, and then they said farming, just one word, farming. But it is these animals. So if you are any meat eater, my name's Mike, I'm 68 years old. I get carded when I get my senior pass. I haven't been sick for 30 years. So my blood's like a river. But until I was 19, I was like you. You know, what did I know? And I went to a university and heard someone like you and heard more. But they expect a pandemic, and that also it's been happening in New York and New Jersey, where the fungus is so widespread they had to tear the ceilings out of the room and clean the bars on everything. So, and they're saying a worldwide, look it up, worldwide catastrophe. A doom is coming. So I like to have a positive attitude. But, if you are anyone here who is thinking about going off the animal kingdom right today, the antibiotics that you will put in your body, if there is a super virus builds in your system, see you later. And so it's not, this is talk, it's not, this is...